and coming together for a retreat like this. Though it is not a retreat center, but I guess just doing something out of the ordinary. Saturday morning you may be running, doing chores, washing clothes, and all the things left over the week, and you set all that apart to come here to the church. And when I heard about the water crisis in Pastor's house, I was only thinking there should be water mains breaking in north of California, not here. In the car fire and those fire affected areas, water breaks out, it might cool down there. And but I think I've seen any time when you do anything with families, the evil one isn't happy. When church gets on, the family agenda is off and will try to derail you. And so really commit your commitment to come here this morning. And so make sure you're sitting with your spouse. It's not as much, it's not a Sunday. I mean, although you're sitting in the church, we don't want to convert into a preachy sermon type. I'll make you talk to your spouse and talk about issues that I want you to talk about. And your kids are here, and they're going to give you feedback, and we're going to speak into their life. So it's going to be kind of an exercise that we'll do together. But I want to begin with a scripture verse. Oh, why is that there? That's me standing by the Areopagus. So maybe I should tell you a story from my refugee adventures. We were in Greece, Athens, Greece. Athens is like the entry point for millions of refugees coming into Europe. You know, the big crisis in Syria and Iraq that is going on right now. More than half the country of Syria is displaced. And they are on the run. Many have been killed. So they make this crazy journey to make it to Athens. Athens, if you make it to Athens, there are several islands in the Mediterranean Ocean. Many of you may not be familiar with the geography in that part of the world. You know where Jerusalem is. Israel, Lebanon, then Syria. Syria is a big country. Very prosperous country a few years ago. And it's all completely fallen apart. So Syria, lots of them makes it to Turkey, which is in the northern border, Istanbul, and then this Mediterranean Ocean. So I've gone all over the Mediterranean Ocean, North Africa and Europe, and so standing by Spain to Italy to Greece and Turkey. Turkey is where a young boy was washed ashore on the beaches a few years ago. That really stirred the consciousness of the global church and the global, Western world particularly. 2-year-old boy dead and washed ashore to the beaches on Turkey. I went to that beach, exactly stood where that boy was washed ashore. Every Saturday, even now, thousands of people come wearing blue and red shirt, blue jeans and red shirt. They come marking that boy who was washed ashore. So just very moving experience to be there. But so then the hope is all of them wants to make it to Greece. Greece part of EU. So if you make it to Greece, you can, because of your EU connections, you can go anywhere in Europe and find jobs. So most of the people wants to make it to Germany, Sweden, Denmark. Those are the places lots of opportunities exist. And so I took teams from India. I one trip 2 Christmases ago, and really rocked my world. What happened was, I thought I'm doing a Christmas mission trip. I was invited to preach in Europe, a couple of churches, and I was preaching. Then I preached this message called Jesus Was a Refugee. So I don't know if you know Matthew chapter 2. Soon after baby Jesus was born, the king of the land has an edict to kill all the babies. So the angel appears to Joseph and says, take the mother and the baby and flee to Egypt. The word flee is to seek shelter. Go to a foreign land and find covering and protection. So baby Jesus and his parents were refugees. So I thought it's a kind of a great sermon idea, all these refugees. I don't know what you've gone through, your plight, how you made it here. But I know somebody who knows the plight because he was a refugee himself. So that was my pitch, to introduce Jesus as a refugee. And so I thought, it's a fantastic sermon idea. I'll go to preach to all these refugees and share, introduce gospel and introduce Jesus to them. But guess what? Thousands of them have dreams and visions and encounters with Jesus, even before they come to Greece. Even when they're on these journeys, walking thousands of miles. It's like walking from San Diego to New York on your feet. That's what they're doing. 4 months, 5 months, 6 months on the feet, walking sailing across the oceans. And many die and drown. So now they call Mediterranean Ocean as a graveyard. One of the largest graveyards in the world is people drowning in the Mediterranean Ocean. I went on those boats and just to kind of identify what they're going through. But I want to tell you one story of an 8-year-old girl. One of my friends who works with refugees who was on the coast of Greece on this island. So if they make it to the island somehow, then you're under United Nations protection. So the Greece is supposed to take you in and they'll bring you to Athens. And from Athens you can go to northward. But now the border is closed. So something like 3,000 to 4,000 people arrive in the city of Athens every day. And so I take teams now from America. Some of the big need is healthcare. So many bullet wounds all over the body. Broken bodies, bullets and bomb blasts and injuries all over the body. I've never seen anything, broken bodies like this ever in my life. What I've seen in the last 18 months with the refugees. So often the local leaders will say that they need medical help. And so I kind of spoke to some churches and some friends who are doctors and nurses. In the Indian community, lots of nurses and doctors and dentists. And I said, come, let's go do a Christmas trip. So I take them to Athens and then serve in the refugees, providing clinics. Amazing stories of what transformation. But this one story comes from one of those refugee friends. He's a pastor, missionary, an American guy, but who is stationed now in Greece for maybe last 5 years. And so he and his team, a Jordanian pastor and Egyptian, mostly Middle Eastern folks, they will go every evening, around 8, 9 in the evening, go to the shores, wait for any boats if they are coming. Because when the darkness comes, the boats will start arriving on the shores of on that island. So one day a boat arrived, sometime past midnight. And so as they arrive, this man will stand there and will share, that Jesus loves you, you're welcome here. And we are here to receive you, and we want to take you. And then he will tell some stories from the gospel. And so he'll pick up some stories about Jesus from Matthew, Mark, or Luke, and then starts telling those stories. So that day the story came from Matthew, chapter 14. The story about how disciples were on the boat and going towards Gennesaret, and suddenly there is a storm. And they're about to drown, and then, Jesus was not in the boat. And Jesus comes walking on the water and comes to them and then says that, do not be afraid, it's me. And so that was a passage that it was a sign. So this man stands on the shores of the island in Greece and begin to tell that you might have come through these dangerous waters, but Jesus can overcome your challenges, can meet with you, and he can give you hope for a new life. And he's the one who walks on the waters. You rode on a boat to come here. It was a rubber boat. There were some 50 people on that boat. And so as this man was telling this story, here is this 8-year-old girl starts shouting and screaming. And so the father scolds him, said that you shut up, stay quiet, we are in a foreign country. And they can do anything to us. They can kill us. You better stay quiet. That is father's admonition to this little girl. But she just refused to stay quiet. So what happened was, they were Syrians and they had come to Turkey. They lived there for many weeks, hoping to get onto one of the boats and ride on and make it to Greece. And they lost everything. They had a beautiful home. His father had a business, substantial savings. All was wiped out within a week. A bomb fell on their house. It just exploded. He lost 2 of his kids in that bomb explosion. So rest of the 3 kids, wife, and he decides to run out to Turkey. One was a baby, 10 months old baby. Mother was holding her. Then other was a 4 to 5 year old girl. boy, and the older one was an 8-year-old girl. They finally, all their savings, whatever money that they had, they gave it to this smugglers. There are a lot of smugglers who will take you across the boat or give you a boat ride. So they pay something like $5,000 to get a ride on that night's boat ride. And so gathers his wife, $1,000 each. So $5,000. I mean, they don't have anything. I don't know how he scrambled that money and borrowed or whatever he did. He pays the $5,000. His 3 kids and his wife and him gets onto the boat. But that ride that night was pretty choppy. And it's a tiny little rubber boat. I don't know how long. I haven't seen the boat. I wasn't there. But my friend tells me that it was completely crowded. It is probably for 10 to 15 people. There were some 55, 60 people that night on the boat. And it was so crazy ride. And suddenly the mother is holding on to the baby. Father is with the little boy, 4-year-old, 5-year-old boy. And the little girl was somewhere on the edge, holding on to the side of the boat. And suddenly strong waves hits the boat, and the girl is thrown overboard. And the girl loses the control and then falls off from the boat. She drowns and sinking there, but she, as she was going, then come up in the water, and then as one of those waves, as they surged her and brought her to the surface, she saw Jesus walking on the water and coming towards her, reaching out to her and picking her out of the water. And then she put her on the boat. So many encounters like this, folks. It's just not just 1, 2. There are hundreds of stories like this. Jesus just showing up. So the girl is rescued. She was all wet, and then suddenly she finds that all her clothes, everything is dried. But her body was still water cold, chilly, cold Mediterranean water in the night. And hair was all wet still. So the father was frantic trying to look for it. Mother was on the other side of the boat, don't know what to tell my wife. I just lost, I'm supposed to take care of the older daughter, and she just disappeared in the night. And frantically trying to call for it. All the other people said, maybe she fell off and there's no way to find out. You can't go back, and we need to get to the shore. And everybody, this man tried to, everywhere trying to get attention from other people. Somebody would stop the boat. Nobody wants to stop the boat. They just want to get to the shore before police catches them. But this girl suddenly appears and comes running to the father. Says that one man rescued me. He came walking on the water. Who can that be? Father has no explanation. He's just glad that my daughter is alive. And gets him under the boat, gets on the shore. As soon as they land on the shore, they hear one man talking about the man who comes walking on the water will see you, and you will not be drowned by the waves and the winds that you see. That was a passage that he was preaching. When she heard that story, she starts screaming, I saw that man, I saw that man. That was what she was telling. Father tried to silence her. She just refused to be quietened. I saw that man. And then finally, this missionary friend of mine reaches out and says that, who is that man that you saw? The man that you were preaching about. He came walking on the water, pulled me out of the water. I was all wet. I'm dry, and he put me back on the boat, and I'm safe here. 3 weeks later, they took baptism at a church in Athens, where I preached several times. Thousands of people having encounters with Jesus. 8-year-old girl's faith transformed her entire family and that whole church. Sometimes we reduce Christianity to a few things that we do in church, 3 songs that we sing, a sermon that you listen, some Sunday school stories that you know about. Jesus is at work. He's powerfully moving all over the world. If only you get to see what I get to see. It is incredible to know this Jesus is on the move, especially with people on the move. You and I come as immigrants. America desperately needs our skills, whether you have medical skills or technology skills, to keep its economy buoyant, and you keep a job and buy a house and live a car. This is a reality far beyond all that. That is a reality of who God is, and God is at work. And you get to see that God's work and to be a part of God's work. As we see all of that we talk about as families and marriages and parenting and church falls within the large backdrop of God is moving in the world. And church has to be in sync with God's movement. And the families has to be in sync with God's movement. I can tell you many stories, but I want to jump into our topic for today. And my verse is, that's in Areopagus. That platform there at the back is where Acts 17 sermon, Paul preached that sermon from book of Acts 17. Men of Athens, I see that you're very religious in every way. You even have an idol marked to the unknown gods. Remember that passage? That is exactly what is written on the Greece. That is believed to be the place where Paul stood there and preached that message. And I was standing and sharing that word to our team. So I did devotion everywhere, wherever Paul went. The first church that he started in Corinth, in Thessaloniki. I took the team to all these places. I do every morning. I'll unpack my devotion. Tell this is where Paul stood there and preached 2,000 years ago. And this is what he preached. And this is the context in which he preached. What was happening in Corinth. So it's fascinating. And these are medical doctors and engineers. They don't read Bible the way, understanding the history and the context and all that. So just sharing the God's word in all those important places in history of the world. And so that backdrop is my picture. I'm standing in front of the Areopagus. Paul is like my hero. So kind of stand there and preach that message. It was very special. Okay, how do I get this? Our morning verse for the day is this. When you talk about parenting, it comes from Psalm 127. Unpack scripture every day as we begin. So today's verse is this. Verse 3 and 4. Children are a heritage from the Lord. Offspring a reward from him. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children born in one's youth. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. It's a wonderful verse about, seeing perspectives on children, who they are, understanding our own role, and that imagery of arrows and a quiver. I keep on my table, I think a friend of mine introduced me this is, even before we had kids. And so then when we had the kids, and then, so some 15 years ago I created this. I have a little kind of a symbolic of quiver. And then I have 2 arrows in it. And I have my boy's name written on them. So I have, each of their names are written, and so I have 2 arrows. And sometimes when I kind of sit thinking, praying, I'll pick up the arrows and look at them and then think about this verse. In our quiver there are 2 arrows. God has given 2 arrows. And they are not going to be sitting there forever. We get them to keep in the quiver for this narrow few years, like 18 years here in America. Then they will be gone. Some of you have at least spaced out your kids. You have 4-5 years gap or 3 years gap. Our boys are only 13 months apart. So they came quickly, they will also go quickly. And within in another 3 years and 4 years, they'll be out of the house. And so we are now started countdown. Every vacation, every summer, every break, we only have 3 more summers with our older one. 2 more summers. This was the last summer, is already over. So 2 more summers. We have 3 more summers, 3 more spring breaks, 2 more spring breaks, 2 more Christmases, 2 more Thanksgivings, only left with our boys. So when you look from the end, you have a very different perspective. So sometimes I take this, I say, Lord, another day, another week is coming, another holiday is coming. What do you want me to do? So that these arrows will go where they are intended for. I have no agenda for them. Children are not our social security, folks. Children is not our retirement plan. Children is not here to grow up and to achieve your unfulfilled dreams. Immigrants are dreamers. That's why you are here. When the millions of people in India, you made it to America. The cream of cream, the elite of elite, most educated, more professional, the smartest of people only make it to America. Because America only accepts them. You got a job, you got a skill, you got an ambition, you have a drive. That's why you made it to America. But sometimes all of our dreams is not cherished and realized. We achieve some things. We are better off than our parents, better off than our grandparents. We drive better cars, have better lifestyles. We buy more things, spend more things than our parents and grandparents ever did. You may be making more money than your parents and grandparents did in a year. You will make it in a month. But beyond all this, you need to understand this reality. Some of your dreams you will never realize. You never got the job. You faced some racism. You never got the promotion. You never got the raise. You never got to buy the house. Many people live with this sense of regret. I wish I had bought that car. I wish I had bought that house in California 20 years ago. I wish I had got that promotion. But when you are about to retire or you just retired, you ask any of them, they don't think about, I wish I had got that promotion 20 years ago. I wish I had bought that car 30 years ago when I graduated from college. They don't think about that at all. So from end of life, you have a different perspective on life. So your job will come to an end. This is not the ultimate thing. We put so much of focus on our jobs. I'm not saying that don't do a good job. Wherever you do, thrive and excel where God has placed you. Be an exceptional employee. But keep the priorities. Home is a priority over your job. Job exists to serve your home. As C.S. Lewis said, what I told you yesterday. Because jobs will retire. One day you'll retire. 65, whenever. When you're 25 and 35, you don't think about 65. But when you're 65, your kids are gone, your health is failing. The big house and the big car does not attract anymore. I preached in a big church, one of the early Indian churches in New York City. And it was a mission Sunday. And the passage that was given to me was, what good is to gain the whole world and lose your soul? Luke's passage in Jesus' statement. And so I preached, on that text. And later on I went out and in the parking lot, this uncle, I've known him as my father's, buddy, old friend. And he said, "Hey, Sam, how are you? Good to see you. What's up? How's kids? How's Mary?" and all that. And I walking with him to the parking lot, and I asked, "Uncle, how's Auntie? I didn't see her. And how's her health?" And she was having some health challenges. And then as he reached the car, fancy, really very successful man. One of the early Indians that done. Auntie was a doctor, uncle was a businessman, ton of money they made, very successful, gave it a lot to church, communities, helped everybody. Very, very successful man that everybody would aspire to be in his place someday. And as he reached the car, I see tears trickling down his eyes. And so I said, "Uncle, are you okay? Is Auntie okay? He's all things are okay." And so he turns around and he takes my passage, what I preached on, and then he tells me, "Sam, what good is to gain the whole world and lose your children?" So I said, "What happened, Uncle? How are the children doing?" Children are my age, in their late 40s, early 50s. 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy. I've known them all. They're kind of close friends of mine. 2 of their marriages are broken. One has a kid, 2 kids now. And the grandparents hasn't seen the grandkid because daughter doesn't want her father to see the grandkid. The pain of a grandfather not able to see his own grandkid. Marriages are broken. 3rd one is the boy is living with somebody that he's not married. All 3 children's marriages are fallen apart. They never made it in career. They're just doing some jobs and surviving in the city of New York. All the dreams and aspiration of an immigrant when he came to America 40 years ago is dashed. Regret. Many, many immigrants live with regrets. You come when you're 25 to America, live here for 30, 40 years, raise some kids, do some jobs, pay for some mortgage. Before you know, life is done. With so much of regret. I said, Uncle, thank you for telling what you shared. I hope more of our community will realize the fallacy of human life. It is so short. 60 years is so short, folks. 70 years is that all you live. Even beyond your retirement, things can cause you more pain. Parenting can give you more fulfillment and satisfaction than anything else. When you see your children walking with God, living honorably in a world, it'll give you more satisfaction than any of the big cars and the jobs can give you. So make that as a priority. If end of life, that is a view. When you are somebody, I had, so these days, many places that I go visit some of the early pioneers who came to America. So I was in a hospital in Toronto. Uncle is dying, probably will soon, a few months left probably. He's not talking about, he had a great job. He's only talking about kids, his wife, his grandkids, and the joy that he derives knowing that his older grandson just received Christ this summer camp. He was so excited. Old man couldn't talk anything, but only thing he wanted to talk to me was, Sam, guess what? I am so excited. Little Josiah, he just received Christ this summer camp. Letting your children and your grandchildren walk with God, it'll give you satisfaction. They'll never talk about the big house that you bought. Never talk about the car that you would have bought. Don't get into this rat race. Like my management consultant friend says, in this crazy rat race of America, you can win the race, but you'll still be a rat. Don't get lost in this rat race. Keep the perspective, keep the priorities. 2, 3, 4 arrows that God has given in your core. Do all that you can. If you have to quit your job, prioritize that. I'm not just preaching. It was a very difficult decision for us. 4 years ago, when boys went into middle school, Mary quit her job. She had an accomplished career, very, very successful career. She studied in Bangalore and came in '89 to America and did a PhD in pharmaceutics and had a very successful pharmaceutical career. And patents and very accomplished scientist. She has many, many. So she said, I just want to quit her job. I said, what are you going to do? I thought she really loves research and that's what she do. I said, I want to spend time at home. 1. Second, I want to get involved in ministry. Enough of this rat race. I can do more patents. I can invent new drugs. I'm only a few years left. I want to do things that really matter for eternity. I realized the struggle because I was exactly there 20 years ago when I left corporate career to go into missions, to choose seminary. And I said, honey, go for it. So I said, where will God provide? All this while I never draw a salary and served voluntarily for Parivar. How will? Let's trust God. We cut down our lifestyle. We live very simple life. But our eyes are set on God's things, God's kingdom. One life. One life is all you get. One set of kids is all you get. What you do for the kingdom will only last. So 21 years later, and 2 kids in their teen years and high school, it is really hitting home. It's our final stretch with the kids. We want to do everything, sacrifice everything in order to make them walk with Jesus. That's our only mission in life right now with our home front. Release them. Release them. So we often talk about releasing our kids. So for example, last summer I was here at your church. That was the beginning of a trip. And we knew our summers are limited now from now on. Like this summer, he did an 8-week class in summer school. So hardly gone. He's going to get busy with summer school and activities with his friends, and another 3 years he'll be off to college. We have little say in that. So last year, we flew to LA and he rented a car and came down to San Diego. First weekend was here. And then one more church had invited me in San And so I preached at that church and the following Sunday we went to LA preach at a church in LA. So I said, 3 Sunday I have commitment to speak at 3 churches. So I'm going to be California. I don't want to go back and forth. I'm doing too much of crazy travel. I just want to go and make it. But if you guys are game, let's just go out and hang out. So 3 weeks, 2 full weeks in between and 3 Sundays, Mary and I and the boys just hung out here in California. We drove 7,000 miles on the car. From here to Phoenix, we drove. From there to Grand Canyon to Hoover Dam. Boys wanted to see Hoover Dam. So I just remember, like exactly last summer, my son was talking to me yesterday over breakfast. I make it a point when I'm home, I eat with them. I eat breakfast, dinner, lunch with them as often as I can. And I date with them. Of course, I date my boys. I take them out, hang out with them, do whatever they want to do. Dating is not until you go to high school or a college and find a girl or a boy. A mom and dad starts dating your kids, taking them out, doing some fun stuff with their kids. So that's something that strongly we encourage parents to do and nurture them and shape character in them. And I'll talk about it. So it was a crazy trip. I said, Sam, what's the plan? I said, I have no plans. Let's just go and hit the road. So Mary and I do crazy thing. We drove around the whole country. So we did a lot of driving. And so I said, 3 weeks. And I said, okay, let the boys set the agenda. This is your last summer. We're going to be together. You said, what do you want to do? So Mary, of course, comes out, we haven't seen Grand Canyon. You've seen Grand Canyon. Boys haven't seen. Let's go to Grand Canyon. Yes, tick. What else you want to see in the West Coast? And of course, we had a friend in Las Vegas, and so we wanted to go to Las Vegas and visit him, and of course, see Hoover Dam and all the tamasha in Las Vegas. And exactly, we were in front of that place where the shooting happened. So then later on the shooting happened. Dad, weren't we there? Those kind of conversation happens at home. And then I asked my older one. He's like the geeky, techie guy in our home. He knows I have an engineering degree and computer, 10 years corporate career in the Bay Area. But this 15-year-old knows more geeky stuff than I know. And so he's my technical assistant now. Anything technology, he's my advisor. And so he's very, very geeky. So I said, son, what do you want to do? So we're going to San Jose and Bay Area and LA. You want to go to Hollywood? We can go and see those places. So he turns around and tells me, isn't there a place where you worked at? I said, yeah. You want to go see my company? Yeah, I'd like to see where you worked. Sure. What else you want to see? I said, Dad, can I visit Google or Facebook? And I said, sure enough, I'll find out, So I called some friends who work in Google and Facebook, had lunch at Apple, Intel, Google, and Facebook. 4 days in San Jose. And of course, I had good friends who were still in the Bay Area, and they take me out. Facebook is the place to have lunch if you ever go to Bay Area. Man, it's just incredible. The whole area. So he takes me to the R&D center, shows me where Mark Zuckerberg sits, to research center, walks everywhere. So Apple is so secretive. They won't let you go anywhere. Once you're on the campus, there's one guy, Hawk, is literally following you wherever you go, because they don't want any of the secrets to be hidden. But the Facebook is you can go anywhere. Meet any of the engineers and talk anything with anybody. Of course, a 15-year-old is like Google, Apple, So Google is a big new building was still under construction and it's going on. So he went there and stood there, this whole new facility in San Jose, and saw that. So that's what he wanted to do. I said, whatever you want to do, we'll do that. So 3 weeks we hung around here. It's the craziest thing that we did, driving 8,000 miles. But those are the things. Do some crazy stuff with your kids before they leave home. Because as Ravi tells me, one of my mentors, Ravi Zach, I meet with him at least once a year. Last time I met with him, so he asked me, how are the kids doing? Every time, so I said, oh, they're growing up fast, and they're almost my height, now they are taller than me. And then he says, Sam, you're creating memories. Parenting is nothing but memories. You better make them good. If it is not good, they'll have sad memories of growing up under your roof. So that's a new way of looking at it. Parenting is all about creating memories. You better make the memories good and lasting and eternal in value. So do something special before they fly out of their home. So I take the arrows and say, 2 years, 3 years for this boy, 4 years for this boy, whatever it is. Your little girl, I preached once, a friend of mine, they just had a baby. So it's probably 3 months old baby. And he goes to the Hobby Lobby and buys an arrow with the quiver and an arrow. They have this, kind of artistic element, and she writes the baby, and she says that the day she was born, and they said, I got 17 more years before I release her. And they start counting the years. I said, man, I wish I had done that. Counted 17 years. I started doing only maybe in the last 10 years. So have countdown. Before you know, your children are not supposed to be in your nest. Your ultimate job is push them out of the nest. Let them take wings and fly. Remember, parenting, 2 things. Put down the roots, take wings. Yesterday we talked about roots. Today we'll talk about taking wings. They have to fly. They're not going to live under your basement, under your authority, under your rule, and it is meant for them to fly out of your nest. Prepare them for the flight. Prepare for the dangers of flying alone, being eaten alive by a hawk, or falling and running into a tree or a wall. How do you prepare for the journeys of life? And you get to do in few years that you have under your care. And before you know, you think 18 years is a long time. It is not. Parenting years is the fastest running season in our lives when you're raising kids. It's the fastest season in your life. Children, those who are growing up, you will realize that you still are in 2nd grade or 5th grade. Before you know, you'll be in middle school. Before you know, you'll be in high school. Before you know, head out to college. It is just so fast these years go by. All right. We talked to kind of shift gears and talk about 7 parenting. We talked to some 2,000 households in America who have kids 5 to 18. And we talked to them. I briefly mentioned last year, but I want to review that quickly and tell them what is happening in Indian households in America. We call this as parenting journey. Common mistakes, 7 most common mistakes that parenting. And I want to kind of gauge how true this is in your house. And the judges here are the kids. They're going to determine, is this true of your household or not? Okay, so they're not directly talking about you. And if your kids are talking, and kids, I want you guys to talk about is this is true of your home. Or not necessarily your home, your friend's home. So your mom and dad, you don't get into trouble when you get back home. So here we go. What I call as 7 pitfalls. It's there in the notes. I've written all that out. I want to quickly go over it. This is what, this research showed it. What Indian Americans are doing. Preoccupation. Too busy doing too many things. Long hours, long career. They're seldom home. They're gone on Mondays. I see only on weekends. They are invisible to children. They are not involved in their children's life. This parent is difficult for a child to know. Children's longing is to know their mom and dad. What does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a man? The children best learn from their same gender parent. And this is number 1. Preoccupation. Indian American households are very, very preoccupied. Number 2, performance focus. Unrealistic expectation. There's so much of pressure on children. Indian Americans are most educated, wealthiest group in America. So we want to try to make our children also highly educated and highly successful and highly wealthy. And so I want to show you this video. You want to cue up the first video? GGM, okay. It's about an British Indian household. It's a television show called Goodness Gracious Me. It's about a household and what the parents' expectation of the children are. So they have lots of expectation, and what I call as how the post is constantly moving. If I reach certain grade I am supposed to get in my subjects, so then the grade moves to the next level. If I did this, why don't you do that also? If I am got all A's, why didn't you get A+? It's constantly moving. So children grow up thinking that no matter what I do, I can never please my parents. Because parents are constantly moving the expectations further and further and further. Okay, you want to show that? Okay, so it's a British show. I don't know if you've seen if you go to England, it's very, very popular among Indian community. It's called Goodness Gracious Me. A lot of them is available on YouTube, and you can watch really funny, interesting dilemmas that typical Indian homes face in a Western context. It's a Punjabi home.
Tell me the worst.
No, it's great news. He got what he needed.
Let me see. English A, mathematics A, physics A, chemistry A. What is this?
What?
Aha!
He got a B in classical studies.
He got a B?
It doesn't matter.
What do you mean it doesn't matter? My son got a B.
It's only one.
Still, it's a B. He got all A's. Mr. Sinha's son got all A's. But my son had to get a Mr. Rowan's son is getting into Liverpool. My son is going to get a place in Melbourne. He will bring shame to the family.
Liverpool wouldn't give him a trial.
And why is that?
Because he's 6.
So that's what happens in Indian American homes. Constantly the goalpost is moving. And they grow up thinking that, so children's thinking is, I can never please my parents. And they always are moving. Expectations are high expectations. And a lot of them go through psychosomatic issues because of the parental pressure. And I told you about one incident what's happening today. My heart is still in New York with that family in the church in New York. That girl buckled. 21-year-old under the pressure, parental pressure. One of the reasons are the mental illness and all of that. But these are some of the realities. Number 2, these parents can never be pleased. We are living our dreams through the kids. Number 3, parenting by default. We are often reactive. We don't have a game plan. We are not proactively engaged with our children. Often it's autopilot mode. We are doing how our parents did parenting. It won't work, folks. Come to terms and quickly work on it. No resource, no training. This may be the only parenting class. I think your church has done 2 or 3 church parenting class. Your parents never went through a parenting class to go through it. They never went through a marriage, but their marriage lasted. But yours won't, your kids won't. Your kids need to see a new way of doing life and marriage, and unless they see you really together, your marriage is what it is supposed to be, your kids' marriage won't last. Because right now your kids are gauging whom they need to spend their life with. And they were watching your marriage. Don't try to act out. You can fool people in your church. You can fool your pastor. You're all together in your marriage, but your kids are watching your marriage. Kids are watching. A girl just walked into our house, called us and visited us. I want to come and visit you. She is 28. Lots of pressure from the parents to get married. And she came home, and one thing that she said was, I said, come over, we're having dinner, and if you want to come and join us. And she said, I'm in the area and I want to come and see you guys. And so visited us, and we ate dinner. And as she was leaving, and I asked her, hey, are things okay, And I said, I came I thought he wanted to talk to Mary and women's stuff, and I just want to seek help and prayer or whatever it is. And no, I came actually to watch your marriage. I said, oh wow, somebody's really watching our marriage. And I said, if I had known that, I would have done a lot of things differently that evening. Nothing was going right that evening. Kids were misbehaving, lots of things. Mary and I was arguing over dinner or something. I would have done something scripted differently, But, I said, why? You talk about marriage and family and all this stuff. And I've seen my parents. If my parents' marriage is marriage, I don't want marriage ever in my life. So I just want to make up my mind whether I want to get married or not. Parents are putting a lot of pressure on me. So that may not be the case here. You have a lot more younger children. But by the time they get 12, 13, 14, the girls are looking up to the mom. Is mom really happy in her marriage? Is she be the woman that she wants to be and her aspirations and desires fulfilled? The boys are looking up to dad. Is dad the kind of man that I want to be? Or I don't want to do anything like the dad does. So they'll go one or the other also. Either they will become like you or they will oscillate to the other extreme and want to do anything like my parents. In your adolescent years, parents watch the same gender parent, but they also will marry somebody like the opposite gender parent. The girls will look for a boy like their father. What kind of a father are you to your daughter? Boys will look for somebody like their mothers to get married. And what kind of mother are you to your boys? Because your daughter-in-law will be like your wife or yourself. And because those are things, those years are shaping them. Pre-teen years, anywhere between 9 to 15, they already shape whom they want to live with. If your kids are older, don't tell me that you can't do anything. Don't give up. If your kids are too young, we still have time. Don't get into those ruts. Remember, those pre-teen years and early teen years are extremely crucial. Navigate through that and build a model home, and that will shape what we'll do. So go through that. Your parent is difficult for a child to learn from. Inconsistency. Mom and dad are not together. We have different standards, and kids often know whom to exploit in order to get what they want. And so these are difficult for a child to trust. I can't really trust my mom or my dad. So if you lose your trust with your kids, it's very, very difficult to restore it and regain it. Inconsistency. So that's why mom and dad need to talk about things. So no matter kids are trying to drive a wedge between you and your spouse, when they see that mom and dad are together on this, they know how to talk about things. They will approach you very differently. And kids, you need to understand that parents, when they live life and the pressures of careers and 2 jobs outside of home and the challenges of raising kids in this culture, understand the dilemma. Because not only you are parenting your kids are actually parenting you or changing the way you parent. By pushing the boundaries and conflicts that arises in the home, all of that. Because inconsistent homes have lots of conflicts. Between generation and between people. Between siblings and between husband and wife. Lots of conflicts. Insecurity. Lots of kids are growing up with lots of insecurities and fears. It is very hard to grow up in America in 21st century. It's just at large. It's a common reality. Technology, why career options are so many, don't know how to discern, I don't know whether I'm a boy or a girl, all kinds of confusion that goes into a teenage mind without the resources for them to navigate through that. And it's extremely difficult. I hope you'll have a little more empathy and understanding. What does it mean? Kids have their way. Kids will eventually often they're selfish. They want to, immediate. They can't see long term. They see immediate. Now I want the iPad, or I want to go watch this movie, or I want to talk to that boy, or whatever that is. They'll push your limits. They know what buttons to press on you. They are a better student of you than you are about yourself or your spouse. By the time your kids are 4 or 5, they know everything, all the limitations and weaknesses of your parent. So you stand exposed before your kids. They really know how to exploit and take advantage of you. So they grow up with insecurity and then overload. Our kids are in 3 clubs and doing ballet and learning piano and learning Kathakali or whatever, Bharatanatyam, Indian cultural languages and everything else. I just learned in my town there is a Telugu classes being offered by the Telugu community. And it just started 3 months ago. And a friend of us reached out to us, and so he started help the church, and so he opened the church, and they started doing in them. It's mostly they're Hindus. They wants to offer the young children who are growing up here in America learn Telugu. And so 2 Sundays ago, there were almost 400 people, 400 children learning Telugu. They all come for this language lesson. So one gentleman, the Tana and some of the Telugu associations are taking a lot of steps now to teach Telugu to the children growing up abroad. So all of these kind of puts lots and lots of pressure. Kids don't have free enough to just grow up to be who they are. We put a lot of pressure on them. In some ways, like my friend says, keep these girls busy. He has got 3 girls. Otherwise, they will get into trouble. Is the easy way to keep the kids occupied. And this is one father's strategy. Number 1, overindulgence. When we can't give ourselves to our kids, we buy them toys. This generation is growing up with more toys than ever. But what they want is not the toys. They want you as parents. And that is something that we can't offer ourselves. So they're looking to bond and connect with them. Doing 8,000 miles on a summer in 3 weeks, it's not about seeing places. It is not about, visiting Facebook or Google. It's bonding. Simple. For me, it's just a simple philosophy. Because when you're in the back of the car, of course, I took turn and asked them to navigate. So they navigated. Each of them took turn, maybe 2,000-3,000 miles they navigated. I drove most of them. My wife drove a little bit. But boys took turn, and I got them to sit on the front seat. And it said, you decide the road, you decide the thing. You have GPS, you have maps, you have phone. All the tools were given to them. You decide the route. I'm going from here to last week to Phoenix. And so he decided. So I remember on a Monday, Sunday we finished from here. Monday we stayed here. Monday night, Tuesday morning we started from here. So my son decides, sits, my older one sits on the front seat, and I said, Dad, I thought we are going on an 8, go to Phoenix directly. Can we go on the southern highway and go by the Mexico border? I said, sure, son, let's go. And I remember driving the other road. What is that high road? Interstate, southern interstate. Number 4? Number 5. Whatever that interstate that goes by the Mexico border. 5. I drove on that. It was crazy. There's this one stretch, some 200 miles through the desert. There's no stop. You can see the border on the left, on the right side. We were going east. So we saw the border, so suddenly he's driving in the middle of it. I see my temperature gauge outside. It is some 115 degrees outside. It's through the desert. Extremely hot. I had never driven. I've driven all other places. I never take this kind of risk. My son just wanted to see the southern border. And lots of talk on the building the border when Trump came, and he wanted to see, where the border is. So on the map it looks nice. It is just a straight line, this much of line. But on the real road is 200 miles on the road. 150 degrees outside. And suddenly our younger one from the back of the car, he says, Dad, what happens if you break down here? Good conversation, right? And for next 50, 60 miles, we talked about it. So I said, what will you do? If the car breaks down here, what will you do? So older one reaches out for a cell phone, says, Dad, there is no reception also here. We can't call anyone. So the anxiety and tension is really building up. And so the great lesson that I taught him is, when you don't have any friends, you can't reach anybody, you can't get any help, you can reach out to God. It's a great lesson to teach, but just the presence of mind. You just need to be there in that moment. Because they're grown up, they're always connected. They always have a tool like this. They can call anybody, get anywhere, get any information. Now there is no cell reception. You are in a car and temperature is 150 degrees outside. What do you really do? So I told, son, you will get in life to circumstances where you don't know. All the people you think you can reach out for help are not available. What will you do? See, these are the lessons that you can teach. These are the times of bonding. So I pulled aside. We were the only car driving on that crazy highway. Not even a truck going that road. And for miles and miles and miles, we are the only one on the road. And I said, do you want to stop and feel how hot the 150 degree weather is? They've never been exposed to anything like that. My wife said, no, don't stop, keep going. So I said, the tire will be hot. Maybe, a road may be melting here. Sustained a high temperature like this. And so I rolled the window down just to feel the heat. Boy said, no, Dad, don't stop, keep driving. And so I made them pray. The car won't break down there. You think that build their faith? You bet. So do some crazy adventures, letting them know that you are trusting in God completely. You're not depending on gadgets and technologies. So that's one of the lessons. And I get them to document all of those journeys. And so I just remember about overindulgence, not the toys that can satisfy the needs. The need to connect and bond. I mean, we haven't done all the right things with the kids. I've done, I can tell you 10 stories where I have blown up and have done blunders. But maybe, 1 in 10 times I got somewhere. And I hope that will stay in their brain for a long time. That's the only hope. You cannot get parenting right. You can do all the right things and the kid can still make wrong choices. And that's their responsibility. You're not responsible for it. And so I don't think how the kids are going to, I'm in the thick of it now. I don't know how the kids are going to work out. How they're going to do, what choices they will make. They're still making a lot of choices. But in the midst of that, for us to know that this is what we are up to. Okay. Turn to your spouse. Identify the most number one mistake in your household. Okay. Children, I want you to talk about, among the 7 things that I talked about, okay, preoccupation, performance, parenting by default, inconsistency, insecurity, overload, overindulgences. What are some things that you see in the ICF families? Not your house, but somebody else's house. ICF family. Okay? So you are safe. I'm protecting you guys. Okay, shoot out. You don't need a big discussion. Some things that you find is common. I mean, this is what 2,000 families said. As an average, we've done this study across it. Don't say that I am clear of all of this. I don't have any of these problems. Okay, parents, or you want the kids to go first? Or parents wants to admit some of the things that, if you have 2 income homes, you hardly have time for your kids. Okay, anyone, shoot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 3, preoccupation, okay. Preoccupied, too preoccupied with work, home, and hobbies. Some parents have hobbies. They're playing cricket every weekend, but they don't have time to throw basketball in the backyard. Indian home. One son told me, teenage son, I just wanted to throw a ball with my dad in the backyard. But he has got all the time to play with his buddies, cricket, in San Jose. This is in San Jose. Every Saturday, he spends around 8 to 10 hours playing cricket with his buddies. But he's got a 15-year-old growing up at his home. He's just longing to throw a ball for 5 minutes with his dad. And when son complained this, I knew this guy well enough. I pulled him up and I said, hey, your son just want to throw a basketball with you. Why don't you just go out and hang out and do something? So Sam, I don't play basketball. That's not my game. I grew up playing cricket. This is like, typical Indian techie attitude, I don't know how to play basketball. It's not about how good you are or, how well, whether you like it or not. It's not about that at all. It is about connecting with your son. My boys can jump higher, run faster, throw ball better. I just get out there. I don't play basketball. I'm terrible in throwing ball. But I just hang out there and play with them. So learn some new tricks. What your kids are learning, because kids also learn in the last few years. So if you're wise enough, I think you will learn some new tricks up your sleeves. Number 1, preoccupation. Number 2, anything else? Any other? By default. Okay. So just roof on the house, food on the table, fridge is loaded. Hey, you have enough. When I went to school, I had 1 slipper. You have 20 shoes. So all these attitude, guilt trips that we ride our kids through. And so this is how I grew up, this is how you will grow up. Because I turned out okay, you should also turn out okay. It won't. The default style does not work. By default is the way you were parented. 90% of our parenting is the way we were parented. And it'll blow up big time in your face when the kids get into preteen years. Okay, any other things? Okay, let's hear from the kids now. Okay, come on. You guys want to tell? What does ICF family is going through? How do they raise you guys? Performance, okay? Strong emphasis on performance. What's your grade? How are you doing in school? Which college are you going? Like a friend of mine, he tells me when the young boy was born, father swings back. This is all in the Bay Area. Pardon me, all my stories are from Bay Area. Because I thought I'll tell you California stories than the West Coast, East Coast stories. So when his son was born, when he was 1 year, first birthday. So I was invited to the first birthday. So I said, what are you guys getting him for his birthday? So the father proudly says, went by Stanford University. I bought the logo and hung it in the room. So every day he will grow up thinking of Stanford. And I've created a fund, set apart, started saving money so that I can send him to Stanford. So I said, why you want to do this? Because when I studied he's from Bangalore. And when I was studying, I was wishing I could go to IIM Bangalore. I couldn't make it. I want to make sure my son goes to Stanford. So performance orientation of our kids. So unfulfilled dreams of the immigrant will drive you to make decisions on behalf of your children. Whether children are interested in business or not, technology or not, IMB is a great school in Bangalore. And especially technology management. And but because I did not make it to IIM, I want to make sure my son goes to, So performance driven, 12-month-old little kid, what does he know about Stanford or any university for that matter? First birthday. I mean, it's good that he's saving up money for his college education. I appreciate that. But hanging up the, the sign of, what do you call that thing in the room? First birthday. He's setting, some of the homes, even before the kids are born, parents have decided what college they will go, who they marry, everything is decided. So this is Indian style of doing parenting. And kids will say, I don't want to study what you study. Like one of our young men in our church, he goes to Champaign, does computer engineering, great school, one of the finest computer science school, Urbana-Champaign. So a lot of people in our Chicagoland go to study in Champaign. So he studies and comes with this degree in bachelor's in computer engineering. He comes back and gives it to his dad. Dad, here is a BS in computer engineering from Urbana-Champaign. I did this for you. Now let me go and do what I want to do. 22-year-old comes back home. This degree is for you. Okay, now let me do what I want to do in life. He's a public school teacher now in the city of Chicago. He didn't want to do a computer job. Many of you techie people wants to make your son and daughter into a Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg. Most of your kids don't want to pursue a computer job because they see your lifestyle. And that alone is a reason that they don't want to do anything with computers. So I'm just prophesying. I don't have no gifts of prophesying. I'm saying that 20 years, that generally trend to be the trend. Techie parents children won't pick up techie. Although it is the highest paying, most opportunities, more jobs, they are less likely to go. Primarily because they see your lifestyle, the demands of the IT jobs on your life. They want to do life, not just make a living. Because you are bent on making a living and not having a life. And they are bent on having a life. That is the American entitlement growing up in America. They are not just thinking about making a living. There's a big difference in making a living and having a life. Okay, children, any other about ICF families? What pressures do they put on you? What do they say? What is the repeated thing that you hear at home? Or somebody else's home that you heard, your friend's home? Studies? Okay, the older kids, tell me here, how about the boy-girl stuff? Are you allowed to date? What does your mom and dad say about dating? Okay, it's too awkward to talk in front of your parents. Because I'm going to get big time in trouble. So I remember young people say, there's a young girl who says that, high school senior, going to college soon, and he says that. So I said, I'm going to, by the time this afternoon, I'm going to talk about sexuality and pornography today. So whether you're ready or not, I'm going to, take them through some of, because they're already talking about some of this, and they have no idea. So this girl who's around 18, she says that, okay, so what did mom and dad say about this dating? And so she turns around and says that, oh, my mom says we are Indians, so we don't date. That reason is a very silly reason. I don't think it will fly with your, 18-year-old and 17-year-old. And so what does it mean to talk about some of this cultural trend? Oh, we will do an arranged marriage when you come of age. You don't worry about it. I'll find a girl for you. I'll find a boy for you. No. It's not going to fly with these American-born kids. They're going to make a choice. You may have some say in it, but you'll have very little say in this matter. They will make choices for themselves. So those are the kind of things. What we thought is our decision, now is passed on to the next generation. They make the decision. Whether it's career choice, mate selection, and all of that. There's a significant shift that happens from first generation immigrants to the American-born coconuts. And one of the decision-making shifts is this. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break. 5-minute, 10 minutes break. You need to go to the bathroom, whatever that is, just stay here. If you need to ask some questions, feel free to do that. But I'll be here. We can talk. But if you need to take a break, stretch break, bathroom break, do that. And come back in 5 minutes. And we'll get back into the second session. All right. More questions coming. Okay, we'll take up the questions at the end of the session. We want to kind of jump and cover some ground. Hello? Yeah. It's kind of not staying there. Okay, what is the time like? All right, it's already 12. Okay, let's just cover. Follow this. It's there in your notes. I call parenting formula. I'm an engineer, so I put into graphs and terms, and I have formula. L square plus M square plus S square. So if you don't remember this. 3 things that we need to do. Foundational understanding of. So L square is loving limits. Limits and boundaries are a good thing for all of us, not just for children. We also live within boundaries and limits. But it's a loving limits. We need to tell the boundary when we draw why we do certain things, why not certain things. Number 2, meaningful modeling. Most influential on our children is how we are living out those values. Number 3 is sustained support. Even when children does not accept, you can count on your parental support. You give them the confidence to fail. Let them make some wrong choices, because that is the only way they will learn to do right choices. But you are committed to standing with them and letting them fail. And they might make blunders, because that's how they own their decisions, they live their lives. And you must share failures that you had in your own lives. If you put all the wonderful things, and you will never get your kids to live up to those expectations. Breaking inherited patterns. If you don't understand what going on in your mind, it's important to understand why you act the way you act. We must, if we don't, those inherited patterns will govern our parenting. So you must be intentional and develop some healthy patterns, new ways of raising kids for the 21st century in the American realities. What are some things that you need to learn and expose yourself? Read about it, learn about it, talk to other people, find other mentors and godly counselors who can help you on this. Changing parenting role. So if you go, there's a lot more. I have given the notes, you can read through that. And but if you go to page number 5, you will see this graph. So 0 to 18 on x-axis, and the y is increasingly decision making. We are giving more and more. Don't make the same decision repeatedly on behalf of your kids. Allow them to make the decision and own the decision. And so continually changing roles. I say job description, your company, you just don't work for a company, Qualcomm or whoever you work for. Every year you have a performance evaluation, right? Your boss will call you and say, how are you done this year? What are your goals for the next year? How your job profiles and job descriptions are changing. The project is changing. Your structure is changing. Who you are reporting, your team is changing. And so is it in parenting. We say every 2 years your role changes. You can't be the same parent for the 18 years. And so we break it down. So if you go to page number 6, you will see the role shift change that happening. So stages of development, 0 to 5 before going to school. Early years, 11 to 12 and 13 years. And resolve and decision making, 15 and 18, that age group. So kids cannot, you can't reason with a 4-year-old. Don't try to do that. Because his mental capacity, his brain has not grown to reason. So rational. So how human brain grows and develops is important for us to understand. And so you change. So first you build rules. Till 5 years old, the rules. But with the idea of building a relationship. Rules and relationship goes together in the early phases. Then by the time you're 10, 11, 12, 13, hey, they need to give a reason for everything that they do. You better be prepared to have some conversation. This is what my dad did. This is what my mom did. You do it because I said so. It's not going to work. You must give a rational, sensible reason why they should do what they do. And don't wear clothes that is that short. Show up at church on Sunday morning. Why should I go to church? Just because you went to church every Sunday? That doesn't mean I have to go to church every Sunday. 13-year-old, real scenario. And so why do I need to go to church? You must give a reason. And sometimes we are not think about it, because this is how we have done life all these years. You don't expose your body, this is how boys see you, and all of this conversation. Are you ready for those conversations? Age appropriate parenting approach. Don't raise a 10-year-old with a 2-year-old mindset. You still think that your child is a baby. You still think your 15-year-old is, I just bought her just few days ago from the hospital. When did she grow up to be a 15-year-old girl so fast? You still are babying your teenagers. It won't work. And what does it mean? So that's why we break it down into your roles. We have a title for each of the stages of the development. So 0 to 2, you are a dictator. You pretty much decide everything. What they eat, when they eat, what they sleep, what they dress, everything else. But the dictator mentality, 100% of the decision is made by the parent. But when an 8-year-old decides what clothes to wear to school, it is easy for you. You had uniform probably in India. Yesterday somebody was talking about how uniform was a wonderful idea in India. So I don't know. I went to Kendriya Vidyalaya, military school. It's a military style. Everything was, uniform, and how shoes should be shined and uniform. My kids have no uniform. They wear whatever, at least some clothes is on their body. That's all. That is the American thinking, And and then I used to carry a big thaila, with full of books. My kids have no books, no textbooks, nothing. They carry one Chromebook, go to school with a computer. That's all they have. And their handwriting is terrible. And because they don't write anything with their hand. So I remember, Hindi, we used to learn to Hindi, we'll get beaten on our hand because the letters are not round enough, It has to be nice, round, and, I can't expect that with my kids. So I took it up to the school, our school county president, say, hey, kids are not writing, don't you think they need to write? At least they need to write their names and sign somewhere and legal documents and all that. So the principal of the school says, Sam, they won't be writing anything in another few years. So they don't need to learn to write. It's an obsolete skill, it seems. This is the reality. It was such a shock for me. I had to learn to write. My handwriting is terrible now. But the idea is, second grade and third grade and write Hindi and English and, Tamil and Telugu. And it's just hard languages to write. English is way easier that way. And so these are different realities I think we need to understand. You can't just decide, 5-year-old, or 10-year-old, and you can't be a dictator. Controller, you make 90% of the choices. So the idea is increasingly, you are having less and less and less control. You are empowering them to make more and more and more decision. By the time 18, they should be able to make all the decision. It won't come overnight. Gradually release them, empower them, and let them go. And so more choices that they can make. By the time they start preschool and elementary school, you're basically a director, letting them make 20% of a decision themselves. But that is a way to maturity. Confidence, self-confidence. I can make this. I can do this. I can fail a few times. I've learned it from my failures. And talk about those things at home. By the time they are early teen years and pre-teen years, you're an instructor. You tell them what are the good things. If you do this, this will happen. If you do this, that will happen. All the scenarios play out before them. But for that, you need imagination. You need time. You need to invest. Explore all the options that are there before them. And so kind of walk with them and explore with them. A lot of conversation. A lot of this simply means you got to spend a lot of time. That is one thing that today's parents don't have or don't want to do it. I don't think I can talk with my teenage daughter because she has got all these questions. I don't know what to talk to her. She's much more articulate and, she really knows what she wants and what she wants. I don't have all the languages. You better learn some languages and learn some vocabulary. Learn some words. And, who was that? Recently somebody said that, my daughter, I can't have any conversation with her. Because within 30 seconds, it just breaks down. I don't think we want to talk. But I found a new way to talk to my teenage daughter. Texting. I call her, she doesn't take the phone. But when I text her, within 10 seconds, the reply comes. And so this is the texting generation. So you better learn to text. You have the iChat or whatever the app is. You better get on the same platform that your kid wants to talk to you. So play by the rules and their platforms and their tools and whatever that is. Don't try to drive them your way if they're 15 and above. But when they're 8 and 10 and 9, then you can have choice. This is what you have. This is iPad you have. You have certain limits on it, and we talk about it in digital parenting. But informer. By the time they're 13 years, we call ourselves informers. We are guide. So right now we are in the guide stage now. We call ourselves we are guides. It's like a tourist guide. I can tell you what are the things out there, whether career or, how do you, so character issues, we talk about character values, different issues. So what happens? How do you discern a character of another person? Are you somebody honest? Are you trustworthy? Are you a truth-speaking person all the time? Or do you have a tendency to lie? How do you really discern somebody is lying or telling the truth? You must help your kids to discern those values and traits in somebody else. And so those are the kind of things that the guides will do. Negotiator. By the time they are in the high school, sophomore or senior years, you better good at negotiation. Because they are amazing negotiators. Kids growing up here. They'll push the limits and push you to areas that you are not most uncomfortable. By the time 18, finishing school, going to college, you're basically a facilitator. And college, you basically turn into advisor. And so by the time they are an adult, that's how American society will treat them. They make all the choices. So what does it mean? You're walking towards maturity and independence. You're not here to make all the decisions for them. You make less and less and less decision on their behalf, allowing them to more and more and more decision. So every 2 years, redefine yourself. Think differently. Acquire new skills. So every even years of your child's birthday, change your job description. You got to begin to think, I'm going to talk to him differently. And it's a very difficult task. I struggle with this too. To understand that sometimes, Mary and I still say that, he's grown so till, he is, 6'1" now. But, he's still a kid in some way. Because he is 14 going 9. He's the younger one, baby in the house. So he wants to be babied. He wants mom to talk, all those, hang around, just kind of be. I said, hey, son, grow up. I mean, you're a 6-footer now. And you can't act like a little baby. But the other guy who's 15, he's going 25. Yeah, he's kind of way ahead of his age. And it's a firstborn traits, So if you know the firstborn, secondborn, thirdborns, how they act and how they react and all of that. So it's like a firstborn, leader, go-getter, he's out there. 15, but he's acting like a 25-year-old. Hey, slow down. You're not there yet. So we had to approach different strategies with both of them. And so each of a child is very unique. What worked for the firstborn will not work for the secondborn. Absolute guarantee. What works for a boy is very different from what works for a girl. So, but parent, the default is, hey, I tried with that one, you should work with this one also. No idea. Wrong approach. So treat each of them very unique and understand their personality. They're wired differently. Don't try to make them like you. Unique, find out the grains, how they are cut, what propensities and what direction they have. What is the bend in their life? What do they like, what do they don't like? So one of the things that I do now is, expose them to global food. So a lot of places I get to travel, I was in, Nigeria and Kenya. So hey, so I go, I go out and eat African food, and I take the picture and send it to my son, older one. And I said, hey, guess what I ate today? This is amazing Kenyan food. This is a native Kenyan food. And so he'll say, oh. So then he comes back home. I came back from the trip. I said, Dad, is there any Kenyan restaurant around here in Chicago? I want to go try some out. Or tell me where you're going next. Can I come? Of course, he wants to travel wherever I go. So one of the goals is my assignment with the job of travel. 20, 30 countries I travel in a year. So different parts of the world. Tell the global church. I tell that the church, like telling stories like Greece today. I tell stories from around the world, what God is doing around the world. Then I tell about people and culture are different. Kenyans. Maybe you have African American friends in your school. But the Africa is very different. And so Kenya is very different. So I tell the story of Kenya, where they grow. So I meet with all the teenage. So I have a Bible study that I lead once a month. When I'm in town, but there are other leaders who lead them. So one of the things that the leaders, they said is, whenever you're back in town, tell us adventures from your recent travel. Tell them about culture, people, what God is doing there, and some of the historical nuggets of truth from those contexts. So I was telling about Panama. For example, I went to Panama Canal. That's kind of the big thing. So I stood there and saw how the trade happened between East and the West and unpacked the history of global economics. So, there's a bunch of, all from 11, 12 to 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, maybe 15 kids and 20 kids we gather every month. And so I come back and tell about the history of Panama and how American engineers cut open a land and created the ships to ply between them. It's an engineering feat 100 years ago. It's a marvelous engineering feat. So tell the whole history of how they built the canal and tell the story of why Panama is so important, the link between South and North America. And so strategic importance, global realities. So expose them. Because sometimes those teenagers are always caught up in their little world. Break out of it. Show them the big reality. Big world. God is big. God is at work around the world. The big things that shaped history and human civilization. So for that, you have to read history, geography, culture, anthropology. If you're only reading your engineering manuals for the latest software platform, you won't be able to raise kids. You got to broaden. Politics, read culture, read history, read, not just engineering if you're an engineer. Or if you're a medical doctor, don't just read medical journals. Broaden your reading and exposure. Because you need those repertoire to engage with your kids. Because now kids my son went for world history, he did this summer. He's got all this question about Indian civilization. Till last year he didn't want to go to India or do anything with India. But he did the civilization history, Mesopotamian civilization. Says, hey, I was there a little while ago. And whichever part of the world history that I said I was there. And so I go, what did you see? What's happening now? I learned about Indus Valley civilization. So when I went to Kabul 2 years ago, what's happening in Kabul? So I told about the war, told about Russian invasion and American war and how American soldiers lay down their lives. Then I weave in one story. My friend, who's a medical doctor here in Colorado Springs, Dilip, I don't know, some of you know from up here in LA. Dilip Joseph was taken captive by the Taliban, and so I tell Dilip's story and how he survived for the, when Taliban captured him, and how he came back to America. And I got him to White House the other day and gave him an award and all that, and congressional award for Dilip, recognizing his valor and compassion for the people of Afghanistan. So you must do some things. Tell those stories. The first time Indian American community recognized him, we hardly have done. An amazing story of a young man. Grew up here in LA. Many of you know, Vidhu and all knows him very well, who is here. And some of you know, our community hasn't recognized what sacrifice he has made for the people of Afghanistan. And he was going through PTSD, and extremely difficult time. I said, senior congressmen, Asian American leaders are meeting together for the May 2 years ago. I said, Dilip, you must come. I want the US government to recognize what you've done, and as a Christian, what you had gone and done in Afghanistan. So one of the senior most senators for Asian Americans gave him an award, a plaque and an award. I think that he deserves it. So, but I tell the story of Dilip to my son and said that, 2 years ago he was with me. He gave me his book. I made my son to read that book. Because this is part of the Indus Valley civilization, what happened, and how India was developed, and how India was established, and the freedom struggles, and how millions of people laid down their lives when the partition happened. So we got to tell those horror stories, because when they're 15, 16, and 17, they're ready to talk about those realities, which doesn't have any, moral dilemmas. Throw them, expose them to those moral dilemmas. Killing happens. Don't shield and but when a 10-year-old, they're not ready to hear that. They don't understand those realities of what happened in the world. Okay, parenting styles is changing. Don't scream like that with a megaphone to your daughter, because she is an iPhone plugged in her ears. I don't think you can see it. She's not listening to you anyway. So home is a training center. Parental teamwork is very important. Okay, this is what I divide as 4 paradigms of. So y-axis is control. I'm in love. This is control or discipline. Okay, go to this page, page number 7. So 0 love, 100% love, 0 control or discipline. So there are 4 types of parents. This parent says, you are your own. Do what you do. I don't care. This parent says, you are the boss. Permissive. You can do anything that you want. I don't have any expectations. You are very lenient, indulgent. I don't want to avoid confrontation and all of that. This parent is an authoritarian, because I said so. I am the dad, I am the mom, I said so, you do it. Okay, so that's the authoritarian parent. This is authoritative. Let's talk about it. So any issue that you come about it in your home, by the time they are preteen years, learn this magic word. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Use this frequently. Anything, they want to make the decision, the final decision, whatever it is, let's talk about it. This is my magic word these days. With 2 negotiators in my home, let's talk about it. Anything, let's talk about it. So you have, since breaking in a conversation, we haven't decided. That means you have decided, but let's talk about your decision. How did you arrive there? What choice you want? What clubs that you want to join in the high school? Who you want to play with? Let's talk about everything. And so kind of, that's the authoritative parent. So you understand who you are. You are the authority figure. You have control, but I want to engage you in a conversation. So it's an inviting, welcoming tone of conversation. What do you think is the tone here? I said so. What do you think the kid is hearing? Huh? Yes? You would like to?
Good luck to you.
Oh, good luck to you. Okay. Yeah. Because, hey, I'm the one who's making the shots, calling the shots here. So you have no role in this. So more and more they will distance themselves from you. Because I don't think I can talk to dad at all. I can't reason with dad or mom. So they'll pull themselves away. More and more things that they will not talk with you. They will talk less and less and less with you about things that really matter more and more to them. Because I don't think my dad is too authoritarian, too strict. This happens in some of the military homes. Because military lifestyle of parenting. You come back home and you act like a military commander at home. Some of you are military officers here. I don't want uncle, auntie here. But some of the children suffer from military parenting. The military parenting is basically very strong authoritarian father figure and a mother figure in their home. Kids dread. They grow up fearful of their parents. There's no relationship. Because he may be a commander of leading 100 people or 1,000 soldiers out there in the field. He comes back home and thinks that your kids also has to obey. Every shoe has to be kept exactly like this. Every dress has to be hung and ironed and kept properly and dressed properly, and all of that kind of things go. Some of you have grown up. I grown up in military camp. Andamans was a military establishment, and my dad was not in military career, but I've not suffered that way. My dad was a great dad, but there are set of rules and regimens. So let's watch this video. You would remember this character, and you need to change here or anything? Yeah. Okay. So this is a famous, father. In Southern California. I wanted to pick up some stories locally here. Southern California, you will recognize this actor, famous Asian American movie stuntman, Jackie Chan. So watch this video of Jackie Chan and his son, and how he talked about, he interviewed this on an Indian television channel, and he's telling about his son, how he and his son is different, and how he was raised by his father, and how his son treats him. And what does it mean to be caught in between? My Chinese father and my American-born Chinese-American son. And what does it mean to be caught in between? So that's kind of the immigrant journey. Listen to Jackie Chan's interview.
But my personal, I like this kind of training because my teacher so tough. So this why Samuel Hong, Yuan Bell, me, we all the team, we so disciplined. Yeah. Because I can go home, put my shoes like this, I take off my clothes, I can float it. Even in the hotel, I met something, I would clean it up. Yeah. My son, okay? I never see the shoes put like this. One on the floor, one in the dining room. Wearing the white shoes running around because he don't wash his own shoes. Socks. No, I can't. You sue me.
They will sue me.
Like this. We get up, we bow, we let the chair come. My son, like this. Yeah. I just come. After film, 6 months, 9 months, I film it. After filming, I go home, I open the door and, hi, Dad, come here. When I see my dad, get up, take the tea, like this. Your dad was a tough guy, wasn't he? Yes. Yeah. That's a traditional Chinese culture, And you see value in that? Because my son was at school in the U.S. Right. Yeah. And that's easy. Yeah. Don't jump, talk to me. Yeah. Yes. Stop. Then cannot talk. Right. When they not move, they cannot talk.
So challenge and struggles of caught between an American generation and cultural parenting values. If you go to Chinese homes, patriarchal, the order is, hierarchy is very clear. And you don't speak much. And so in Chicago, I'm a consultant to a lot of Chinese churches. And so I'm doing a 1-year project with all the pastors in the church. So there are some 100 pastors. So even today, I'm 1 month, I'm speaking to all the 100 churches. So around 100 pastors, and they come for the monthly meeting. So 4 times this year, I'm speaking to them. So last time so this is May 1st Saturday. So there are 100 pastors, they're so I did all these research and all these things, I'm presenting it. And so nobody's talking. And so then suddenly I see the patriarch of the community. He's like one 80-year-old man who's like an Asian Development Bank, very senior officer. He's like a father figure to the Chinese community in Chicago. So he stands up and says, very good research. Thank you, Dr. George, and thank you for this input to our community. And he said this. So when he said this, everybody said, everybody's ready to talk now because the father figure has said, check mark, it is done. It's just amazing what happens in the Chinese community, the hierarchy. If you think Indian is bad, you got to go to see Chinese to see hierarchy. Very, very clear hierarchy on those. So understanding authority and discipline. This is one game you'll make a lot of mistakes, but please make mistakes. Yeah, and discipline issue, you will struggle. And so there are some help about how to improve your disciplining. Understand, build relationship. So I'll tell you another formula. Rules without relationship leads to rebellion. So build relationship. That's the secret. Before they get to teen years, you must have a relationship. Because once they're teen years, you can't build a relationship there. You must already have the asset. A lot of relational currency and asset you must have gained. Points that you must have scored by now, by the time they get into your teen years. Relationship without rules is chaos. They can do anything that they want. There's no set of limits and boundaries at all. Then it's just a free-flowing, anything goes kind of thing. Relationship plus rules learns respect. They learn to respect you as a father, mother, because that's good for them. They had to play by the rules. If I don't set the rules, somebody else will set the rules in their lives. They just can't drive anywhere and how they want. They have some lane rules. There are disciplines on speed, how you use the low roads. When in a public setting, you must learn to respect authority figure. If you don't respect, the policeman will teach you how to respect authority figures. And I hope your children don't get that far. If you don't know how to dabble with drugs and start selling pornography and selling your nude pictures of yourself online and start circulating your friends' nude pictures, you are breaking the law, and you can get and have serial consequences of that. So responsibility. So that's the key. We want our children to grow up to be responsible adults. By 18, they had to be responsible adults. Are you preparing them? Are we preparing them towards responsibility and understanding authority figures and respect for that? Okay, this is often what happens is conflicts. Don't aim to have no conflict homes. If you don't have conflicts in your problem, there is a serious problem in your home. Much more serious problem. Because you don't have, many people don't have any say at all. You must have differences of opinion. If there are 5 people, 3 people living in the home, each one will pull in different direction. So what is the issue at hand? How do we discuss expectations? What are some accountabilities and pros and cons of each of the decisions? We have to go through those kind of things, especially in preteen years and teenage years. Don't just go over it. This is the issue at home. These are the 3 options. These are the advantages. These are the disadvantages of each of those options. And in light of all this, how do you make a decision? How are you going to be accountable and responsible for the decision that you're making? So that's a process of how you help young people to make decisions for themselves. Then rewards and consequences. Everything has a consequence. If you do well, you will receive the reward. If your decision turns out bad, you have to bear the consequences of it. So you must teach them to pay for the consequences. Don't step in and save your kids all the time. Make them make some blunders, make some injuries, and that's the way they will learn about whether they're playing a game or. And our older one a few years ago went and played soccer and broke his collarbone. Came back from the game and broke his collarbone, straight impact. 2 12-year-olds. And he was in 8 weeks in sling. But not the pain of broken bone. He was more pained by the fact that I left the rest of my soccer season. I can't play with my friends for the rest of the season. And he was on the sidelines. Every Saturday he will go watch his friends play the game. With thing hanging on it, he can't even play. And so just seeing him not able to play, not be with his friends, it caused him even more pain. And that was a revelation for me. Emotional pain is so much more harder than broken pain, broken bones. And when you have your daughter has a crush on somebody else, one boy is pursuing her, when you have broken hearts, and how do we navigate and able to talk about it? Talk about sexuality, attraction. If you don't feel attracted to somebody of opposite gender, there is even more serious problem. You must navigate our young people about gender identity. What does it mean to be a man or a woman? Family contracts. And I think we'll talk about this as we go through conflicts. And one example is about cell phones. And so before don't just give a cell phone and talk about it. So in our house now we have a charging station, a table designated for charging station. That means mom, dad, all the kids, everybody surrenders their phone at the end of the day. Nobody takes a phone or an iPad to their bedrooms. Bedroom is what we call as a technology-free space. So we have designated rooms in the house where only technology is allowed. No computers, no televisions in our home. I mean in our bedrooms. And we didn't have television until kids turned 14. So we didn't even have a television. We let go of our television. So that's our choice. I'm not saying that you watch Bollywood movies or whatever you do, news or financial, depending on your industry or work, you might need to have a TV. But we gave computers early on. So it kind of is, it's kind of lose some battles and win some battles. Overall, I hope you will come positive. So now we have a contract that we call a cell phone contracts. So that means if he finishes data plans, I've given a limit for the first year data plan. And if he exceeds that, he has to pay for it from his pocket money. Teach them about financial responsibility and earning money. By the time, we think it is hard, why should I let my 16-year-old go and work in a local fast food restaurant or a local mall? We think, he can do one more grade, or he can do some extra class like that father, Punjabi father in that video. Don't just ask them to make money. I mean, it's not about money. It's learning responsibility, work ethics, going and being accountable to somebody else. And so our boys haven't gone to work, but I told them, if you want to work, one of the new companies nearby us is now, I don't know if you have this, Chick-fil-A is a big restaurant, it's a Christian company. One of the finest training program for young people, Chick-fil-A offers it now. So I said, next summer if you want to work, go work in Chick-fil-A. And apply for it and earn your place and just go. And I said, Dad, is all the money that I make is mine? I said, you can keep it, but you need to know, you need to understand, 10% saving, 10% giving to God's work. You don't have to give it to Dad's ministry, you can give it to anybody, any ministry that you want. Learning them to tithe, learning them financial principles. So we went through the boys in the entire financial principle class. And so what does it mean to earn? What does it mean to save for college? So he has his own college funds. He has saved a little, but he has an account. He manages bank. So last 8 or 7 years, I think when we were 5 or 6, I opened his first bank account. So he works, he does some coding, he builds computers for his friends, and he earns money. And so I'm teaching him what does it mean to be accountable, what are the things that you can do, and how do you save. So I said, you can see, all the money you earn at Chick-fil-A, you can have it. But remember, 10% you save, 10% you give it to God's work. And then you live on whatever you want to do, 80%. So what do you want to do for the 80%? And he said, Dad, I want to upgrade my computer. So he's a geeky guy. So, so what does it mean to have contracts? And so I want to give you a sample contract, and for you to, so somebody can distribute this. So I have 2 things. We'll talk more about digital parenting in the afternoon. One is online safety. So keep that with you, or maybe just distribute this now. Cell phone contracts. So what does it mean to understand and talk about with your kids? Nothing is final. It's you can write up a draft document. You don't need a stamp paper or countersigned by people. But you and your son and your daughter get into an agreement. I am giving you a phone. You earn the right to have your first phone. Decide what is the right age. Every kid is different. Some kids are ready to have a phone by the time they're 9 and 10. Some kids are not ready even at 15. And can't have an iPad. And so if you have an iPad, you need to have certain boundaries. That means how many hours will you use, what rooms will you use, what are your policies, what you will watch. So if you ever watch a nude women in the picture or email, or you got to talk to mom and dad about it. And so we have a set of rules that we say the George household online rules. And so we got our son to sign the contract when he got his first smartphone. So these are kind of things, I don't think your mom and dad ever did that because they didn't have to worry about you having a cell phone. And so these are the kind of agreements that you have and which will help you to negotiate. It's not about Christian parents. A lot of even secular parents in America are doing this because it's dangerous if the kids are not prepared to handle the information that they can get on these phones. So navigate through this, have conversation with that, nurture relationship. Don't just set rules and try to expect your kids to walk through that. boundaries. I think we talked about it. This tug of war is not about who wins. The tug of war. It's about all of us winning it together. And so what does it mean to have a win-win mindset in negotiating through conflicts in your home? So if you think you fought with your wife or husband and you won an argument and your wife lost an argument, you still lost the game. So in marriage, you and I need to see what does it mean, because you're on the same team. You and your husband and your wife, we are on the same team. If both of you don't feel that we have won this conversation, if one of them loses, both of them loses. What does it mean for you to gain that perspective that we have to win this together? And we need to have this oneness and togetherness when we talk to our kids. Otherwise, they will drive a wedge between us. They will exploit our weaknesses and our strengths. And they know whom to approach when. So what does it mean? Understanding consequences. What does it mean to foundational truths that you can set apart? So talk about it with your spouse. If some of your kids are young, don't worry about it. But if you're given an iPad, you must. So American Academy of Pediatricians now gives very clear. I see 5-6-year-old sitting on iPad for 8 hours. This permanently damages their brain. You have no idea. We'll talk about it later in the afternoon. So every age, the forming years, the brain is still in formative stage. All the stimulation that is going into signals and the images that are going into the brain just completely miswires. And they will never be able to concretely think and operate when they come into school and high school and college. They will never be able to read. They can't take a book and read a book at all now. It's very, very dangerous tendency that we are going in. People spend 10 hours gaming on a video game or a computer game. And they have no idea how much of damage that is doing it. So regulate it. And guidance. The American Academy of Pediatricians says 2 hours a day is the limit. And I strongly advise that until the kids are maybe 13 or 14. Don't let them on iPad and iPhones, and because that becomes a babysitting tool now. What used to be television now, kids are given the iPad because they sit quiet. Otherwise, they'll bother me all the time. So give the phone, give the iPad. And it's dangerous. Remember, Steve Jobs never gave iPad and iPhone to his own kids. Bill Gates doesn't want his daughter until she went to college to have a laptop. Not that they can't afford, not that they don't believe in technology. They are the guys who created the revolution. But they don't want to give it to their own kids. And so if they know better, I think you and I better, follow some things. And they're not Christians, but they believe and they understand the power of these tools in manipulating and messing up with the brains of your kids. So if you're playing too much on iPad, anywhere between your 2, 3, 4-year-old is playing anywhere more than 1 hour a day, she will not be the one who will make an iPad or, work for Microsoft or Apple. They'll never get there. Their brain is completely gone by the time they get to 18. They probably won't even go to college if you're starting on iPad that early in life. This is a very dangerous trend. We have no idea how much of damage this is doing. So a new psychologist, Harvard psychologist, that came out with this research. They're saying that we are raising a generation of shallows. He calls them shallows. They are so shallow in their thinking. Can't think deeper, can't process information. They're browsing, hyperlink text all over. So they have lots of information at the fingertips. But they don't convert that into knowledge. They don't convert that into wisdom. They can't think deeply and write a paper and share eye to eye with anybody else. This generation in another 20 years will have a lot of broken marriages, not able to resolve conflicts, not have interpersonal skills, not able to communicate properly, not listen to messages, not listen to your teacher. They'll get so little from their ears because their eyes is what is gaining information and processing information. They'll process a lot of information. They know where to go and they know how to Google and find something. But they don't know how to interpret information. And those are the information that really at a graduate school, college level is looking. So in fact, I'm a professor. I teach at a college. So we were given a training this summer. First time, this 2000 and born, those who are born after 2000 are coming to university. In 2018. So those 18 years old were born in 2000 and after that. So the first batch of 21st century kids are coming to universities. So professors were taught how to teach this generation. Because what worked in the 20th century will not work for this century, because they don't learn. Don't ask. One of the instruction is, if you've gone to American graduate schools in America, you know what does it mean to write a paper. It's not like mugging up like in India. You got to write critical thinking, and writing a paper and presenting a paper is an essential graduate level skill that you acquire. So one of the things that says that they can never write a 10-page paper. How do I tell a graduate student not to write a critical think about some issue and not write a 10-page paper? That's my professor hat. I'm thinking about it. What will these kids? They can never process information at a deeper level. I went to Princeton and Fuller, and their reading load is heavy. Every week we read 20, 30 books we read. That's the kind of reading load. This kid cannot even read one book in one whole week. They'll never be able to do graduate college in American university level expectations. That's why college education and graduate education in America is just so steep. Elementary school, graduate school, middle school, high school, and all is very low. Once you get to college, it just gets cheap. Because the brightest of the brightest kids from all over the world is coming to American universities. Your kids will never be able to, if you place anywhere between 3 to 5 hours on iPad when they are between 2 to 15 years old, they will never make it to college level. They won't have the life skills required to thrive in a college environment today. So that's the recommendation from the Harvard psychologist, who calls this generation as shallows. So how do we teach shallows? So new ways of learning and reading and teaching and all of that is coming. And so we had to acquire new skills to teach this generation. First time. I think this fall I'll teach one class. So I had to handle this shallow generation to think, and how are you going to teach them? Growing up in another culture, three major challenges, and I'll be done. I want to kind of quickly walk away with you. What does it mean? This is what I call as an uprooted generation. We lost some things as we came to America, pursuing a dream. We lost extended family, lost some values and culture. We are growing up in a foreign culture. So we suffer loss, rejection, confusion, and assimilation. Is what I call as identity theft. Where pieces of our thing is lost. It's not like the ID theft. But what does it mean to lose myself? Who am I? Am I Indian? Am I American? Am I neither? Am I both? This is an extremely difficult challenge for your kids. And you must have some empathy. And if you're grown up outside of your Tamil Nadu or Andhra or Kerala or some other couple of cross-cultural experiences, you understand this. And so what does it mean? So that's all coconut generation is all about that. Immigrant households, there's just like a lack of time, resources, and training. All that goes on. Second one. Okay, this one. You know this picture? Have I showed it here before? I think I showed you this picture. This mother is a Carnatic musician in Chennai, in New York. Originally from Chennai, classical musician. This is her daughter, by the way. And I call, she's a rapper. At least music is in the blood. The genres may be different. So she's a fusion rapper. Born and raised in New York. And look at her dress code, her hairstyle. Look at this. Chamal, Chennai, any of you from Chennai, every evening buy those jasmine flowers and put it on your hair. Remember those? Those are from Chennai here. And look at her catsuit, or whatever you call this kind of dress. So I call generation gulf. It is not just tiny little gap. Two generations, they're so far apart from each other. What does it mean to? So bicultural kids. And if you remember that movie, Namesake. Have you seen that movie, Namesake? Oh, must see. I take a whole class on Namesake. The author is a good friend of mine. She teaches English at Princeton. And so this is a movie of, it's about what does it mean to be caught between cultures. So Bengali parents, father and mother growing up in Connecticut, New York, and two children, American-born kids, and what goes through when they come of age. And so the two daughters, this daughter and one son, and their wrestles and the intergenerational conflicts. Good movie to watch for you to understand. If your kids are young, you know what is coming up as they go into high school and college. Okay, so I divide coconuts as 4 types of coconuts. Children growing up here can be divided into 4 categories. I call them as Leela, low Indian, low American. X-axis is Indianness, what I call as ethnic identity development. How ethnic are they? American, this is assimilation. How American do they become? So the lower left is 0, 0 to 50, 50. If you draw a graph on 100, 100, so I call them Leelas. This is Hilas, high Indian, low American. They become much more Indian, cultural, whatever that is. This is Lihas. They don't want anything Indian. I am not Indian. I'm all American because I'm born here, whatever that is. They are all American. So, but they look Indian. They have brown skin and hair is like Indian hair, whatever that is. Then this is this hee-haw, high Indian, high American. So 10% of our kids are often here. These are the dangerous lot, I say. They have confused. They don't make decisions properly. They don't know what they want to do with their life. They have very few friends. They make lots of blunders on career choices and marriages, and the marriages won't last and all of this. This is the 10% Leelas. Very, very dangerous to grow up here. Around 20 to 30% are here. Another 20 to 30% are here. Maybe another 10-15% makes it. This is the most of the safest psychologically and culturally, and able to thrive in both worlds, and able to talk to parents and friends, and able to live between both worlds optimally. Very difficult to get there. And young people differing, 12 here, 13 here, you will go oscillate between different things. When I break up, have my first breakup, I might come back to my Indian culture, Indian family. So the whole thing, there's a test available. You can do with your kids and understand how kids are navigating through these 4 quadrants. Understand your kids in a better way. And you can understand yourself too. Understand who you are. If you are 12, 13 and 14, you can read about it. A little more deeper psychology and anthropology here. But it'll help you to understand who you are. So if you are here, you have very unique needs. You must minister to your kids who are Leelas and help them to navigate between both the cultures. And if you're Heelas, you need to do some things as they assimilate, understand the power of assimilation, and when you resist it, what happens. And if you hate everything Indian, they must come to terms with their Indianness. You're born to Indian parents, you have Indian genes or whatever that is, come to terms with that Indian reality of your side of it. It's like Moses, he said, I'm all Egyptian, I don't want anything, Hebrew. He wanted to push away from everything Hebrew in order to, because unless you come to terms with both sides of your world, you'll never make full of your life, because God has knit you together, made you Indian, growing up in America for unique reasons and purposes. So more about this in the book, grab that. Mother Teresa, some of you heard my stories from Mother Teresa. I traveled with her and had a tremendous impact on my life. And I found in one of her journals, it's a quote with which I started the Cochrane Generation book. By blood and origin, I'm an Albanian. She was born in Albanian until she came to India. By citizenship, I'm an Indian. She became an Indian in early 80s. I'm a Catholic nun. That's my job. As to my calling, I belong to the whole world. As to my heart, I belong entirely to Jesus. I'm not going to be defined by my passport, the color of my skin, my job, my degrees and education and job or ethnicity. I'm going to be defined by heart allegiance, my calling. I was made for this in the world. They must discover what that is. I am completely committed to Jesus. My calling and my allegiance is so liberative. From the trappings of culture and assimilation and peer pressure, you liberate yourself to understand your greater purpose is why God made you an Indian, put you in an Indian household to grow up in America. They must discover them. This is the additional responsibility of Indian American parents. We must navigate them to find their place in the world, but has a greater fulfillment and a purpose that is beyond success and education and wealth. They must find their place in the world. What is that? We must help them to discover that for themselves. Don't push it upon them. You are made for this. You have to become an engineer and work for this company and marry this girl and produce 3 wonderful grandkids for me. That's a wrong idea of parenting. Okay, transmission of faith. Look at this girl. She's half American and wearing nice half sari or whatever that is. So that's the reality of growing up in dress codes and generational challenge. They will lose language. They will lose all the cultural context of India. They will lose many things. That makes it also harder for them to discover who they really are. So don't, if they learn all the language, they will figure it out. They won't. The language and culture can give you this much. But the higher callings are deeper longings of the heart. To find somebody to live your life with. Find an allegiance, some idol, some gods that you can bow down to. If they don't find in Jesus, they will bow down to some other idol. It can be pornography or some other things that will suck their life out of them. Because they are designed to bow down before some idols of our times. And so maybe your idol is success and wealth. Maybe you are bowing down to that idol. That has become your consuming passion in life. Success orientation of Indian American community. If that is what it is, kids will move further and further away. Because that does not satisfy my craving. What does it mean to be who I am made to be? So what does it mean? Parenting as character training. I think I mentioned briefly about it. You get few years to build some values and virtues deep down inside. And the best way to do that is live it out. If you really believe these values to be so important that your kids must have it, you must live it out yourself. And so one of the big value that I'm impressing upon my boys now is being a global Christian. You're not the only Christian in the world. Your church is not the only church in the world. There are Christians all around the world. When I worship, when I stand up and go to church, right this day, God's people have met with them and worshipped in their own languages and cultures all over the world right today. And I'm standing alongside of them in expressing my praise and adoration and worship and my commitment to Jesus. So, because that's my reality now. Because I'm worshiping every Sunday. I'm with one churches and one cultures of the world. And I'm beginning to see the big picture, that what God is doing around the world. But our kids don't. Because 15-year-old, he only goes to one church, one youth group is all that he knows. But I say that, okay, when you stand there in your youth group, remember, there are men and women. There are teenagers in China who is on fire for God. There are Abdullahs that, I think I talked the story about a young teenage refugee boy who was drafted to become a terrorist. He's become a Christian now. His devotion, his commitment is unbelievable. So I go visit with him. He's a 16-year-old boy. He lost his 6-7 members of his family. ISIS came into the house and killed all of them. 16-year-old boy witnessed this, completely devastated. And so he runs away from the terrorist group and makes it to Germany. He's in Germany now. And so he now, when I spoke to the pastor of the church where he was baptized, and we gave him a Bible, and Arabic Bible, first Bible that he owns. And so pastor starts complaining about him. So I was really concerned. Is this boy okay? Is he doing okay? What does he need? Does he need some help? And does he need to go to a hospital or do some counseling and psychological trauma that he has gone through? And all this racing in my mind. I'm asking all these questions. Then suddenly pastor says, Sam, I have lots of problem with this boy. I don't know what to do with him. I'm end of my rope. When are you coming next time to Germany? I want you to meet with him and talk to him. I said, what's the problem? What do you need to do? I can call some people. I can get some help if he needs. The problem with him is he says, Sam, he's reading Bible and praying all the time. So I said, what's the problem with that? Isn't that what we tell new believers? New believers, read Bible, pray every day, So I said, that's okay, but, he reads Bible 15 hours a day. Early in the morning, he gets up, 5 o'clock, gets on his knees, opens the Bible, prays, cries, and reads the Bible. Almost half of the New Testament in his memory now. Rote memorization. That's how Islamic society, Muslim society, they're trained. He's just reading the Bible all the time. Till 9, 10, 11 o'clock in the night, he's reading the Bible every day. I come back home. I have 2 teenagers. Mary and I, last 2-3 years, have been inculcating this value. Read Bible 15 minutes every day. It's a value that we have, our family value. One of the things, every day read 15 minutes at least. They think 15 minutes doing this is like, check mark, Dad, I've done my quiet time, I've read my Bible, as if we are doing a big favor for God. When I see this boy reading Bible 15 hours a day in a refugee camp, nobody tells him to read. He just has fallen in love with Jesus. When you know Jesus that way, you will hold this word so preciously. Sometimes you and I don't know the author of this book. When you don't know Jesus, Bible is a routine. Going to church is a routine. I'm doing it for somebody else. Some ulterior motives will drive you. This boy is crazily in love with Jesus. His Bible, a year ago when we baptized him, is only this thick. And now, October, when I saw him, his Bible is this thick. Not just from usage, but he cries. He cries a lot for all that he has gone through. He opens the Bible and just cries. He just floods. His tears just flow like a river. And his Bible is soaked with tears. And he reads and reads and reads and reads. 15 hours a day. Because he knows who wrote that book. Because he met with them I told this story last time here. I think I was telling them yesterday, these folks. So more than all this, if you want those values, you have to live that values. Has your children seen you on your knees? Has your children do you quiet time? When they wake up and come down and run into you, what is your first greeting? Are you on computer, talking to your friends, watching Bollywood when they come back from school? What is your priority? If they say you love Jesus, you walk with Jesus, and you live by those codes of values and those principles, they are more likely to follow that Jesus, because they know mom and dad is crazily in love with this Jesus. May our kids see us. And I'll close with this story. I still remember our younger one was probably 15 months old. That's an old memory. I told him my son doesn't remember. So he has just barely learned to walk. And so he got up and making his way to the family room. And I was there. I get up early. It's my routine. I can't do any other way life. And I just open my Bible and sit with the scripture and read, pray. I journal. So I've done this for years. It's my practice. That's how I start my day. So my little guy comes out and he goes just straight to his playpen. And there he grabs his picture Bible. And we gave him, when he was first birthday, a picture Bible. So he comes and sits right across from me on the other couch and has his Bible, and he's trying to imitate me. But the Bible is upside down. He doesn't even know how to read. He's only 14 or 15 months old. He's just imitating Dad, because he saw Dad sitting with Bible in his living room. And so I thought it's so funny and so cute, a 15-year-old boy to do this. And so I called Mary. He said, you should come and see this. And Mary comes running down, and he sees this 15-year-old boy. He's got his Bible upside down. He said, what are you doing? He barely didn't talk much. He's trying to see, So Mary sits with him and starts reading the Bible, and start reading. Then Mary tells, you better keep doing this Bible reading every day, because they are watching you, and they will do what you do. And, now they're teenagers. They wrestle through their day and challenges, whatever it is. But they've seen their mom on their knees. And we don't do it every day. We struggle through that just like everybody else. But what does it mean? He may not do 15 hours like Abdullah, because his circumstances were very different. But I hope before he goes to college, he understands the value of having your personal time with God every day. And that's a value that you want to inculcate and pass on. It will take 8 to 10 years, any value that you want to pass on to your kids. Not overnight. So pick those things, few things that are important. Invest 8 to 10 years. And then that becomes imbibed, impersonalized. They become their own values, and they will build their lives upon those values. Be intentional. Work, take a long term. Don't lose some battles for the day, but win the war for their souls and their choices and their future. There is a battle raging for the allegiances of your kids. You must better get into this. You may not like the combative terms that are used for fight for your families. If you don't, somebody else is fighting for the allegiance of your kids. The idols of our times, they will bow down. They will consume them and destroy them. The thief cometh to steal, kill, and destroy. But I have come to give you life, life in all its fullness and abundance. May your children, may you find the fullness of life in Jesus. And you may be so crazily in love with this Jesus that your children will choose to walk and come to know this Jesus and fall in love with that Jesus. And that's parenting. Helping the next generation follow Jesus and live his greater purposes for their lives. Because that's why God brought you to America. Not you to be successful, have a career, live in San Diego in suburban, wonderful, beautiful home. There's a greater purpose. I hope you will live up to that greater purpose and the challenges of it. Moral development, I think we talked about it. Why it is important for you to have faith conversations at home and come to church, provide leadership at home. I think we covered a lot of this. In conclusion, most important assignment in life. We get to do it only once in life with one set of kids. Either we blow it big time and live with regrets, or we do somewhere in between. or we don't do it all and completely neglect our responsibility. Adapting to our changing roles and cultures. Don't do the Indian way, don't do the American way. Find out what God's way is for your unique Indian American reality and culture. Knowing your style and studying your kids. Study and research your kids. Every move, everything that they do, every dress that they buy, every conversation that I research them like a child psychologist will do. And gain some skills to do that. Understand what God is doing in us. It is not about raising kids. It is about what God is changing us and transforming us by giving the kids that God gave it to you. Every kid is uniquely designed to transform you and me as parents. That's God's agenda. God is parenting us as an adult, as a parent, to become more like God the parent. Because when we become more and more like God, our kids will be desire and long to be transformed. So that's why I call parenting and family life is a crucible for discipleship. It's all about discipleship. God is in the business of changing you. By changing you, God will change your kids. But you and I are willing to be allowed to be changed by God. All of us are becoming more like Jesus. That's the rather greater objective. And it's a journey. And it takes many years. And we get to do it only once. May we do it well. And do it for the glory of God. Amen. Chuck Swindoll, many of you love Chuck Swindoll's writing. This is what he said. Each day in our life, we make deposits in the memory banks of our children. You better make them good. And we are creating memories, as Ravi says. You better make it good. Thank you. Pastor.
Thank you, Sam. We'll few announcements for the afternoon sessions. We are, running out of time. It's already one. Otherwise, we could have a question answer session. So we will have a lunch at the fellowship hall. So you can stay back. If you want to stay back here throughout afternoon, that is absolutely fine. And others can go back and make sure you'll be back here by 7 o'clock. The youth will go with Noble and Betsy, and they will be back here at 4:45.